British forces in Afghanistan have just passed a grim milestone, the death of the 100th British soldier since the beginning of this year. In the face of rising casualties, the British government has reaffirmed its commitment to the fight against the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. My guest today is Britain's Armed Forces Minister, Bill Rammell. For how long is this Afghan war sustainable? Bill Rammell, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you.
Let me begin by quoting to you the words of the chairman of the US Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Mike Mullen. He said, and it was this week, he said, "We're not winning in Afghanistan, we're losing." Do you agree with that assessment?
No, I wouldn't put it in those terms. I think we face an immense challenge, and I think you can look at many areas where we are making progress. But we need to do more, and that's why there's been this comprehensive strategic reassessment of what we're doing and the way that we're doing it. General McChrystal's review, I agree with that analysis, we do as a government, and we need more troops, both to tackle the violent insurgency, but critically to help us to train, mentor and partner the Afghan forces to build up their capability. Now, I think the decisions of recent weeks, in terms of our troop uplift, the decision by the Americans, the decision of 8 of our partners at the moment, I think is a very positive one. We need to drive that forward.
You say, I agree with General McChrystal and what the US administration has done, and frankly, you don't have much choice, do you? I mean, the balance of power in Afghanistan when it comes to the NATO effort is now so totally dominated by the United States. 98,000 or so troops will soon be there for the US. The next biggest deployment is ours at 9,500. It is a US-made, a US-driven strategy.
Look, I'm not going to deny to you that the US is the global superpower in that sense.
So we have to go along.
No,
we have no choice.
No.
If we disagree, frankly, we can either create a terrible political embarrassment, or we keep our mouths shut.
No, we do make our own decisions, and we have the right, if we don't think it's the right thing to do, not to go down that course. And one of the conditions that we put in place before we would agree our troop uplift was that there had to be significant contributions from other coalition partners, because I think it would have been wrong to view this just as a British effort. There needs to be equitable burden sharing, and I think we were right to say that.
Well, you said it, but it didn't make much difference to the French, for example. They've got fewer than 4,000 troops in Afghanistan, and they give no indication whatsoever they're going to put any more in the field.
Well, look, I can't put words in the mouth of our French counterparts, but one, due to the way we handled the troop decision, we've already got 8 nations who've said we are going to deliver more troops.
What do you think of the French Defence Minister saying that he believes that the French are already making, in his words, an incredible effort, and he sees no reason to provide more troops?
We have consistently argued that this coalition is about equitable burden sharing, and we need all nations to do more. I would watch,
is the French position equitable?
Hold on, I would watch this space. You've already had 8 nations. I think there are going to be further announcements over the coming weeks that will show contributions within Europe and outside of Europe increasing.
You say we're in lockstep with the Americans. Now, Barack Obama, in the set-piece speech at West Point Military Academy, he said the American objective is to, quote, begin the transfer of our forces out of Afghanistan in July of 2011. Are we in lockstep with that position?
Let's be clear on what we've said. Firstly, this is our exit strategy. It is about developing the capability of the Afghan forces so that they can take responsibility.
Yeah, but exit strategy beginning in 2011.
Yeah, no, hold on. I'm going to come to that directly. But we need to build up their capability so it is safe for us to withdraw. Now, we have already said, the Prime Minister said, that we will start district by district to see the transfer of responsibility during the course of next year. Barack Obama set out an expectation, not a rigid timetable, that during the course of 2011 he would expect troops to begin to be able to withdraw. It's going to be a gradual process, and we anticipate that by 2013, 2014 we will be nearing the end of that transfer of responsibility of the Afghan forces. But that is the only way we can get to the end state of safely withdrawing, because the point I think we consistently need to make clear is that we're in Afghanistan not because we want to make the world a better place in that part of the world, but because fundamentally this is about our national security and our national interest. If we were to withdraw tomorrow, before the Afghans are capable of securing the country for themselves, I have no doubt the Taliban would return, Al-Qaeda would re-emerge across the border, and you would see the re-emergence of that terrorist capability targeting us and targeting others.
It is a problem for you, is it not, as a senior minister in the Ministry of Defence here in the UK, that you've been making that sort of argument, you and your colleagues, not just you personally, for 8 years, as long as this campaign in Afghanistan has lasted, and all the opinion polls suggest the British public is less inclined to believe it now than it was many years ago.
Look, firstly, I am not going to deny that when you suffer the level of casualties that we've suffered, particularly over the last period, that people are not going to ask demanding and searching questions. And it's right in those circumstances that ministers explain as clearly as possible why we're in Afghanistan and why it's in our national interest. Notwithstanding those.
And you know what the public's response to all of your messages is. 2/3 of them, according to the latest poll, think that the war is unwinnable.
No, I mean, it depends how the questions are framed and when you ask them. The most comprehensive recent poll that we have conducted through Mori within the department shows a clear majority of people still support our mission in Afghanistan. Does that mean I'm complacent? Does that mean that we don't need to do more to explain why we're there and why it's in our national interest? No, of course we do. And I recognise that this is difficult and challenging. But both that polling evidence, but also my experience as an MP with a marginal constituency, I know when I talk to people on the doorstep, yeah, there'll be many people who disagree, but the majority do understand that it's about our security and our interests.
How difficult do you find it personally, as Minister of State for the Armed Forces, directly responsible for the men and some women as well, who you are putting in harm's way and who both British and American military officials have acknowledged in the last few days are going to die in greater numbers because of the extra deployment? How do you personally feel about that?
That's an extraordinary responsibility on my shoulders, and I think long and hard about it, and I'm not going to give you a glib response. I make the decisions that I do because I believe they're the right ones. I also know, talking directly to our troops, and I was most recently in Afghanistan in July, and our troops get that this is about our national security. They've got a real conviction, and they believe that we're making progress. But what I can't say, and nobody can say, is that you can engage in warfare against a bloody, ruthless enemy like the Taliban and guarantee against the loss of life.
What exactly is your political strategy? You may be able to keep a lid on the Taliban, and of course the Al-Qaeda aren't even really in Afghanistan anymore, they're in Pakistan, but you might be able to keep a lid on all of the jihadi extremists that you've just talked about. But ultimately, what is your political strategy? Gordon Brown said recently, President Karzai has got to accept there will be benchmarks which the international community will set, by which he is going to be judged. But my first reaction to that is, what if Karzai doesn't meet those benchmarks? What's going to happen?
Well, he's going to have to, and...
Well, what do you mean he's going to have to? He's failed for 6 years. He's been in power for a long time. Yeah. He's consistently failed. Everybody who's worked with him, from Western governments, indeed many Afghans as well, say that there is inherent corruption in his administration, deep incompetence as well. You can't just say to me, he's got to, because he isn't.
What I'm going to say to you is that we are using, along with our partners, every lever at our disposal to get the Karzai government to move in the right direction. I also think we need a reality check. He does need to do more to face up to corruption.
Or else what? You're saying ultimately we'll get rid of him?
No, I'm not saying that. That's not...
So what's the leverage you've got?
We have all sorts of leverage in terms of the £510 million aid that we're delivering to the country that others are delivering.
But the point is, if I may, Mr. Rammell, you characterise it as a war of necessity, as, of course, does Barack Obama. You say we've got no choice but to be there because of our security. So whether you withdraw monies or whether you threaten Karzai with political consequences, the fact is you can't leave your commitment behind in Afghanistan because of the way you've characterised the struggle. You're stuck there, painted in a corner by your own rhetoric.
But I believe that we can make progress. I mean, there needs to be a reality check here. This is the 5th poorest country in the world that doesn't have a tradition and a history of democracy. For all his faults, and let me make this point, I think Karzai does represent the will of the Afghan people. We have to work with him.
Of the Pashtun people, almost 50% of Afghanistan, you think Mr. Karzai currently represents their will, their consensual acceptance of his authority?
I think it is clear that for the majority of the population, he does represent the will of the Afghan people. That doesn't mean he's perfect or his government is, and we need to ensure they do more to face up to corruption. We also need to ensure, in terms of the political strategy, that he and his government reach out to those moderate elements of the Taliban who are prepared to renounce violence and can become part of the solution in Afghanistan.
Now, an independent Afghan MP said the other day, Dawood Sultanzoy, he said the other day that 10,000 individuals are deserting from the army every year. He said the figures in the police force are even worse. He said that so many policemen are on drugs. He said, how can you work with a police force where so many of the members of it are addicted to drugs and stoned? Stoned, his word, not mine.
Yeah.
Now, this is the reality, and yet the Americans have said in the last few days they want to double the size of the Afghan security forces and make them effective by 2011.
Well,
how on earth is that going to happen?
Firstly, look at the progress. We've already got 90,000 members of the Afghan army.